following is a paid program. The opinions expressed are not necessarily those of WNBU and Interbanks Media. Welcome to All Things Money with David Blain, a thoughtful and revealing discussion of actionable ideas and effective strategies to help you through the complex world of investing, taxes, and real estate. Now, with All Things Money, here's David Blain.
Americans too broke to go bankrupt. That was the headline that came out of CNN Money yesterday. We'll have some in-depth analysis of that story and others here on today's show, All Things Money with David Blain. I'm your host. Thanks for joining us today. Our show is comprised of articles and information and tips, and a lot of them come from questions from viewers and listeners just like yourself. So we encourage you to let us know what's on your mind, what you want us to talk about, the questions that you may have. Our phone number is 252-633-0107. Our email is allthingsmoney@dlblain.com. And, of course, you can always visit us on the web at dlblain.com. That's dlblain.com. There you'll find information about myself, my firm, as well as archived copies of the show. Okay, back to the story. This came out of CNN Money. It says Americans are too broke to go bankrupt. And this is, I don't mean to make light of the people filing bankruptcy. It's certainly a serious situation, but the story itself is rather humorous and full of irony. But according to the National Bureau of Economic Research, the average cost to file Chapter 7 bankruptcy is more than $1,500. And as a result, anywhere between 200,000 and 1 million consumers are estimated to be unable to afford the cost to file, which, by the way, that's a pretty big spread between 200,000 and 1 million consumers. That tells me this is not an exact science that these folks are dealing with. But anyway, there's a $300 charge just for filing the paperwork in federal court for Chapter 7, and there are other expenses including mandatory pre-bankruptcy credit counseling, pre-discharge debtor education courses. These average about $85. And of course, the number one expense filing bankruptcy is the attorney's fees. Now, I don't advocate that people do anything for free. If an attorney spends time preparing for bankruptcy for someone, they should certainly get paid for it. But something is wrong when someone is filing bankruptcy and they can't afford to pay the fee. As one lawyer said, this was a great quote. He said, "When clients come in and I tell them the fee, they look at me like I have two heads and say, 'What part of I'm filing for bankruptcy don't you understand?'" I thought that was a great quote by an attorney, and it's true. It's more complicated. There's a lot more filings than there used to be. And the idea being that they wanted to make it a little bit more difficult for people to file bankruptcy because so many people were just taking that as the easy road out. And they certainly accomplished that. But I do agree, if you're trying to file bankruptcy, it should not be a financially burdensome thing because otherwise you would have the money to pay. I think the requirements to file should be stringent so that people can't just skate out on their debts, but it should not be a matter of costs that they can't file. I mean, that's why they're filing bankruptcy. In bankruptcy, Chapter 7, which is the most common, enables you to wipe out all of your debts in the shortest amount of time, but it doesn't relieve you of things like student loan debt or alimony payments. And you can request to have the $300 court fee waived in bankruptcy, but the attorney fees are still there. Anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. Check it out, Americans Too Broke to Go Bankrupt. Now, here's a topic that I thought would be interesting to explore. We've talked previously on the show about what we call gurus and Warren Buffett and how he does his investing, and after the financial crisis and recession, how he was buying certain companies. He was getting preferential shares of stock, preferred stock, warrants, things like that. and how learning from great investors is a very good strategy, but trying to follow them can be dangerous and very difficult, as well as the fact we talked about just from the law of large numbers, you would expect a Warren Buffett to emerge. And I like Warren Buffett. He teaches some very good things. I think there's a lot to learn from the man. But we see here that Buffett trails the S&P 500 for the third straight year. And my point in bringing this up is that we stress, in our firm that we are there to capture the returns of the market. We focus a lot on risk management. But so many people are obsessed with beating the market or beating the S&P 500. It becomes this obsession that can be very dangerous, and they follow these gurus. Previously, it was Bill Miller of Legg Mason. I think he beat the S&P 500 for 12, 13, 14 something years in a row. But then in the space of 3 years, he had such awful years that his 15-year track record then trailed the S&P 500. And the same things happen here with Warren Buffett. Is whenever you have somebody outperform for a fair amount of time, there's something that's called mean reversion. And you would expect that their returns would revert back to the mean over time. And that's exactly what's happening to Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway. And when I say Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway is the publicly traded company that Warren owns, that he sort of uses as like a holding company. Anyway, so it fell 2.4% through April 31st, 2011, compared to a 2.8% advance in the S&P 500. So this article was comparing the value of his stock compared to the S&P 500. Of course, Berkshire Hathaway owns companies. Warren always says that the stock value is not a good measure of whether they're progressing forward. He likes to look at book value. Did the book value of the companies that you own go up rather than market? But this is talking about the market. The growth has definitely slowed over the past 15 years. Warren has largely stuck with these traditional industries, machine tools, power production, railroads, of course his insurance companies, where a lot of the growth has taken place, in technology and some other things, and this has certainly hurt him. But as he always says, he doesn't invest in things he doesn't know, and I think that's a key principle. Is if you're out there doing your own investing, if you don't understand what you're investing in, it's probably a bad idea. What is kind of interesting about some of the recent purchases, for example, he acquired Burlington Northern Santa Fe. He paid 31% more for each of the shares than when the deal was announced. His purchase of Lubrizol Corp was 28% more than the stock market value. And so typically Warren is a value manager, and it just has kind of surprised me to look at some of these recent transactions to where I feel like he's paying more maybe than he should be. Of course, he knows more about it than I do. Well, we'll continue with this. We're coming up on our first break. We'll continue talking about Warren Buffett and what's happening with his company when we come back from the break. So for All Things Money, I'm David Blain.